He will see in Bakersfield, San Jose. We'll see in Buffalo, Toledo, Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for those tickets. We have a special guest with us, Norman Finkelstein, political scientist, activist, whose primary fields of research are the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the politics of the Holocaust. He received his PhD in political science from Princeton. He has held faculty positions at Brooklyn College, Rutgers University, Hunter College, New York University, and DePaul University from my hometown, where he was an assistant professor from 2001 to 2007. His books include The Holocaust Industry, Reflections on the Exploitation of Jewish Suffering, Gaza, an inquest into its martyrdom, and most recently, I'll Burn That Bridge When I Get to It. Politically incorrect thoughts on cancel culture and academic freedom. Please welcome back to the show, Professor Norman Finkelstein. Thanks for coming back. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So I don't know if you're aware of what's happening on social media with Dave Smith and Douglas Murray, but I wanted to run one thing past you because Douglas Murray implied talking about anyone with a Jewish surname who is in a position of power inside the war machine is anti-Semitic. And let me just play a little bit and we'll get your reaction to it.
Back to this thing of when certain ideas catch hold and what's really going on in them. Now, to attribute American foreign policy in the last 40 years to Paul Wolfowitz and Dick Pearl is knowingly or otherwise to encourage a conspiracy that has very obvious legs. And I just urge you not to do it.
Okay, let me respond to this a little bit. First of all, it is not at all saying that these guys therefore just control everything. I'm just pointing out what a four-star general claimed, where plans originated, and that they ended up being implemented. That doesn't mean that they were the absolute ruler or arbiter of what was going to happen. But again, I got to say, for you to say that I can't bring up the neoconservative... I
never said you couldn't.
Okay, let me just... Right, but the implication is that I'm unwittingly giving fertile ground to some like Jew-hating conspiracy if I bring up a guy who's got a Jewish last name who was a consequential person in our government. This is like identical to the arguments of the woke left. That would just be like, oh, if you even say something, if you bring up the crime rate in Chicago, you're basically a bigot because other people could take this and run with it.
Come on.
No, you come on. What's the argument?
Look, if you said to me...
I said a four-star general said something, and there's what's the response?
If you said to me, or somebody said to me, don't you think that some people are running the global financial system? And I said, possibly. And I said, who do you think it is? And they said, the Rothschilds. I think I'd be right in saying there was something a bit off about the character of the person doing that, because it seemed like they were playing to some kind of lazy old trope. And I think similarly that if you give the implication that a cabal of people, particularly, and you should be really careful about this because of the people who will come up underneath you, if you give the implication that these cabals exist and you decide to elevate the Jews or people with Jewish names in it and then play down the non-Jews, I can tell you, you will be opening up a world of madness.
But am I really playing down the non-Jews? I mean, go look at the stuff that I've said about Obama, about George W. Bush.
You said Middle East policy is Dick Pearl and Paul Wolfowitz. And I said,
no. I mean, this is why I'm saying this is a woke leftist tactic. I literally just mentioned that a four-star general said this. I'm quoting him. And now you're telling me that this is the same thing as promoting...
Don't pretend to me that when you quote somebody, it's a totally arbitrary thing that you just pluck out of the air. You decide
I'm not arguing that it's arbitrary. I'm saying I'm using the quote for a reason. I was connecting it to an argument.
And I'm saying to you...
I'm giving fertile ground to Jew haters to mention it.
I think that when you decide to elevate what is a conspiracy of people who are overthrowing the governments of various countries, some of which haven't been overthrown and others of which have, but by the way, were not overthrown by American dominance, certainly not in Syria. And then you say that the people who are doing it are these people with Jewish names. I think you should be more judicious than that, because you probably know what bubbles up underneath you online by now.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's no question that there are, no matter what, and by the way, it's funny just hearing you say this to me. I mean, look, and by the way, I completely agree with you. I think you've been one of the best champions on opposing Europe's insane immigration policy. I also think the United States of America's had an insane immigration policy. I'm happy to see that that seems to be being reversed. But imagine you made a point about immigration, and I were to say to you, be careful what's bubbling up online, because now look, the fact is, if you are taking a position that opposes, say, Muslim immigration into the UK, then yes, it is quite possible that a lot of people who really just hate Muslims are going to end up liking what you had to say or following you. But that doesn't mean you're responsible to it. And if I were to say that to you, you would be the first to very eloquently point out that is a complete non-argument. The question is this policy good or is it bad?
So let me bring in Professor Finkelstein just to see if you would like to comment on that kind of tactic, saying that if you mention someone with a Jewish surname who happens to be a big part of the war machine, that's somehow enabling and it's bubbling up and enabling anti-Semitism and anti-Semites and Jew haters. What have you seen this a lot?
Well, obviously, it's come up a lot. It reached you might say, its peak with the publication of the book by John Mearsheimer and his colleague, whose name just slips my mind, where the U.S. U.S. foreign policy in Israel, some innocuous title like that, in which they were determined to demonstrate that Israel had, via its surrogates in the U.S. government, the Israel lobby, that they played a very large role in shaping U.S. foreign policy, and not least in the Iraq debacle under the Bush administration. First of all, as a general rule, these are fair game. It's fair game. It doesn't make it right or wrong, but certainly you can make the claim, you can allege that the Israel lobby, of which a large domestic component is American Jews and organizations and places of power and so forth, that the Israel lobby is playing a large role in shaping U.S. policy. That's certainly a permissible position. It doesn't make it right. I count John Mearsheimer as a friend of mine, and even, I would say, a good friend of mine. I didn't agree with him. I wrote a very large chapter of a book on his book on the Israel lobby. I didn't agree. We remain friends. We still go out for dinner when he comes to New York. It's a legitimate position. I happen not to agree with it. On the other hand, there are occasions where a stereotype, sometimes they call it nowadays a trope, about a particular people, it can happen that a particular person or persons are acting out that trope. And the fact that it's a trope or a stereotype does not make it then illegitimate to call the people out. Let's take a simple example, because that's too abstract. So Senator Chuck Schumer just wrote a new book. It's called Anti-Semitism in America, A Warning. And in the book, Senator Schumer says, I happen to be cheap. He says, I happen to be cheap. He says, unfortunately, that bears out a stereotype about Jews, because I, Chuck Schumer, am cheap. Now, he having said that, if you say, Chuck, you're cheap, are you being anti-Semitic when you say that? No, he happens to be cheap. He admits he's cheap. He says, I know it's a Jewish stereotype, but it's true, I'm cheap. So, in the same way, if you say that Jewish donors to the big universities, the Ivy League universities, were responsible for the most outrageous, brazen assault on academic freedom in American history. Now, some claim now that if you identify them as Jewish donors, you are playing into a stereotype or a trope about Jews being all-powerful, and therefore you are anti-Semitic. Well, it happens to be they are billionaires. It happens to be they are very rich. It happens also to be they are Jewish. Those are facts. And the fact that the facts conform to a stereotype doesn't suddenly make the facts anti-Semitic. The facts remain the same. Now, it's true. They bear out a stereotype. Just like Chuck Schumer is cheap, bears out a stereotype. But it doesn't change the fact that he's cheap. And by the way, I'll add, I'm cheap. Now, I am. Now, you might say, oh my God, the stereotype's beginning to sound true because Finkelstein and Chuck Schumer are both cheap and they're both Jewish. Well, maybe it is a Jewish characteristic. I haven't a clue. I haven't a clue. But the fact that you conform in your behavior or conduct to a stereotype, that doesn't make it anti-Semitic if you call it out.
And, I would previously, when you bring up the example of billionaire Jewish donors.
Yes, they have led the assault, the most brazen, outrageous assault on academic freedom in American history, and they continue. They continue. Now, it's true that President Trump has broadened his target. He's going after DEI, he's going after ethnic studies, he's going after a lot of things in the universities. But even as he's broadened his target, the focus on Middle East studies programs, the fact that all of these people have been disappeared, picked up from the street. Now you ask yourself a simple question, or your audience, let its answer ask a simple question. Where are they getting the names of people at the University of Alabama? Do you think that J.D. Vance supplied those names? Do you think Elon Musk supplied those names? I mean, we are talking about obscure individuals in obscure programs at obscure universities. Who is supplying the names? We know who's supplying them. So now we're alleging a conspiracy with Jews supplying the names. Well, guess what? They are.
So I was going to say, I would previously say instead of Jewish billionaire donors, I would have said Zionist billionaire donors. But now they've conflated Zionism. The Trump administration and the Zionists are conflating Zionism with Judaism, which is what I thought anti-Semites did, right?
Well, a lot of people use Zionists. I happen not to. I mean, that would be a kind of a separate discussion. But you are correct. I use the term the Jewish supremacist billionaire class. There is a class of Jews who are Jewish supremacists. They believe that Jews can do no wrong. They believe that Jews have never done anything wrong. They believe that Jews are always innocent, immaculate victims. There is that class of people. Now, it's not all Jewish billionaires. There are some decent billionaires, I guess, at least in that question. But there's certainly a class. I would include in that class Bill Ackman, the person who went after Harvard. He started the whole assault on academic freedom. I would include Barry Sternlicht at Brown University. I'd include Robert Kraft at Columbia University. I would include, of course, Sheryl Sandberg. Sheryl Sandberg is a classic Jewish supremacist billionaire who created this fictional film called Screams Before Silence, alleging that Hamas had weaponized rape on October 7th. There is zero evidence for that. There's zero evidence. Now Sheryl Sandberg is going around crying. She said, I asked my best friend, will you hide me if it happens? I mean, this woman, she's suffering from Holocaust. She's suffering from HDS, Holocaust derangement syndrome. She now thinks she's Anne Frank and asking her friends whether they will hide her behind their bookcase. I mean, these people are completely lunatic. They've lost their mental poise, their mental equilibrium, and they are Jewish supremacists.
They will see in Bakersfield, San Jose. We'll see in Buffalo, Toledo, Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for those tickets.